About 60% of elderly are likely to be vitamin B12 deficient. So every person who is over the age of 65 should get a vitamin B12 lab test done to see if they are actually absorbing the vitamin B12 from their diet. Because there's lots of vitamin B12 in a person's diet if it's not restricted, right? So if they are not able to absorb it, then they need to be prescribed it and be taking it as a supplement. But then it gets a bit confusing. Like, well, I need B vitamins. So you go and get your B complex. But then all of a sudden, you've got all these other vitamins coming in. And are we getting too much of these vitamins? I find a lot of people who are elderly, they're trying to do the right thing, but they end up with all these special formulas.
Welcome to Personalized by Vitamin Lab, the show where we dive deep into the world of personalization in healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. David Duizer. Please remember that the following discussion is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease. Speak with your healthcare practitioner first before integrating anything that you learned today. Join us as we explore the remarkable stories, breakthroughs, and possibilities that come with the pursuit of personalized healthcare. Welcome back to Personalized. I'm your host, Dr. David Duizer, and today I'm speaking with registered dietitian Rachel McBryan. Rachel spent 15 years doing something that sounds simple, but is actually quite rare, meeting people where they are with food. Based on Vancouver Island, her career has taken her from remote northern communities with Island Health to community services in Squamish to the Canadian Diabetes Association in Vancouver, and now into private practice at Wise Eats, serving patients across British Columbia both in person and online. What strikes me about Rachel's work is the range she holds without losing coherence. Cardiac risk, eating disorders, cancer, prenatal care, IBS, diabetes. These aren't just different diagnoses, they're different relationships with food, with the body, and with identity. And yet Rachel's built a practice around the belief that nutrition care should be as individual as the person sitting across from her, or on the other side of the screen. She trained at the University of Alberta, completing her dietetic internship in 2004 and 2005, and has since accumulated the kind of clinical breadth that only comes from working in systems that don't always have enough resources, which has a way of teaching you what actually matters in nutrition care. It's that depth combined with a generally personalized approach to nutrition that allows Rachel to make a difference in the health and lives of her patients. Please enjoy my conversation with Rachel McBryan. Welcome back to Personalized. I'm your host, Dr. David Duizer, and I'm here with registered dietitian Rachel McBryan. Rachel, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Oh, great. I'm so glad you're on the show. Like we said in our little pre-interview chat, we haven't had a dietitian on the show. And so it's really, really awesome for me to get an opportunity to speak with you, someone from your profession and someone with a wide range of experience like you have. So thanks so much.
Oh, I look forward to it, yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of that experience because, one of the points of this show is to talk about how people personalize their careers and get to a place in integrative care, functional care, and holistic care where they feel like they can actually personalize and practice the way that they think would be the most beneficial for the community that they're in. So you've worked in public health, community services, diabetes care, and now in private practice. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey and what brought you to where you are today?
Well, even as I graduated my university degree to become a dietitian, I wanted to work in private practice. I registered, I incorporated a business. I did everything, actually. I did the thing. And then I got in front of my first client and I wasn't sure what to do with my first client. And I don't think they noticed, but I felt it so much. So I ended up actually collapsing my first business and I went and worked in the clinical setting for a while. And I would recommend that for any dietitian who wants to work in private practice is to go and work in a clinical setting because it really pushes you outside of your comfort zone around working with clients you have no idea and you have to learn. It really forces you to learn how to learn and be on your back foot, ready to jump and help this person because we are not. I always get these questions where it's like, well, do you know how many calories this is? Or is this a good source of calcium? And I'm like, well, I'm not a textbook, right? So we're not filled with a textbook full of information, but what we do have is we have a in-depth understanding of how nutrition and the body works together, and then the rest of it we know where to look for the information.
Yeah,
So
completely,
yeah,
completely.
but when I
Mm.
first graduated, I didn't know that. I just thought that maybe
You should know everything.
I should know. I could pass the exams, so I should know. But people come up with the most interesting problems when it comes to nutrition. It's not all textbook, right?
Completely. So these experiences have guided your practice development and where you are now and how you're practicing. But how have the communities been different? Because I know you've been kind of all over British Columbia, and that presents different challenges.
Absolutely.
Well, how has that helped you out in your clinical practice?
Well, yes, of course. I've worked in rural settings and in a variety of different life stages. So, I've worked with pediatrics, outreach, I've done home care, I've done tube feeding, so I've done a lot of different things where in the long term care facilities, so that facility work. So it creates a situation where it's a good foundation for my career because it gives me a more generalized experience, so that when somebody walks into the door with something unfamiliar or unique, everybody's unique. That's the thing about being able to provide personalized services, is that when you recognize that everybody is unique, you don't have a cookie cutter approach for everybody walking into the door. You create something fresh for the person that's in front of you. And without having that broad experience or broad range of working with many, many different types of nutrition problems, then it just takes a lot. I remember my first client working private practice about 5 years ago. I probably spent 8 hours working on a nutrition plan for that particular person, right? And then as I continued to work through nutrition problems, then I started seeing that, well, this applies for this person. It could also apply for this person. But still, people still surprise me and walk through the door with a presentation that requires me to really sit back and think about what they personally need.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I talk to young, like new grads a lot, right? Young naturopathic doctors. Just the position that I'm in, somehow they find me,
Hmm.
and we chat. And I'm like at my 10-year mark, and I'm really with you. Like I think those first like
Yeah.
5 to 10 years, you should have a broad range of experiences. Like I think
Yeah.
people are, watching YouTube business educations and seeing like niche in healthcare, and
Yeah.
niche in healthcare, when you're like the 20-year expert who is the best at this one possible thing, but as a like you don't know, you have no
No.
clue, and you have this very unique experience that has brought you to that like first day, which for me was bro space athletics.
Oh, okay.
Let's do this very one thing. And I got thrown into a clinic where all sorts of people were being referred to me because it was attached to a pharmacy, like owned by a pharmacy. And so, although I'm in the same seat still, my patient population has been this like insane variety. And thank gosh, because I would
Mhm.
still be bro guy, right? Like, and in our profession as naturopaths, it's not the best place to be because usually it's not that type of population who comes to see naturopaths. So thank gosh I got thrown into this position. But did you carve out your path? Like how did you do this? Were you looking for new opportunities or did they sort of come to you randomly?
Um, what a person told me, it was on the pier of Lonsdale. I like to travel. I like to be around. I like different cities. I have no hesitation to move to where the opportunity strikes. So I'm on the pier with this accountant from Romania. And he said to me one day, he said to me, just find a place where you love to be and make a career out of it. And I was like, that is probably the best advice I've ever heard for for anything.
Yeah,
So I'm in this small resort town called Parksville on Vancouver Island. I know,
which we
right?
love.
It's beautiful here. And, I've got this beautiful apartment and beautiful ocean around me and beautiful people. And it's just the place I want to be. So that's why I that's why I'm here. And it's not the only place I've been. Like when I was more interested in Argentine dancing, I was like, oh, I want to go to a community that has a great Argentine dancing community, or, you know, so in every stage of my life, I've just gravitated to where I want to be. And then I make my life there. So I
Right.
think that was good advice that I
That's
got
great
from,
advice. Yeah,
yeah,
that's really excellent advice. Lifestyle design
yeah.
is everything now.
I know, right? But I learned it young.
Good for you.
So I've lived that. And where do you want to raise your kids? Well, where I was at the time when I had my son, it was like, he's going to go into school. This is not the school district I want to put him in. So I
Mhm.
moved. So, it just depends on where you are in your lifestyle.
Mhm. Completely.
So I guess that fits into the personalization. It's like, you want to live your best life, right? And so it's important to have those thoughts about what you're gonna where you want to be.
Vitamin Lab revolutionizes personalized supplements, empowering health practitioners to create tailored supplement formulations that address each patient's unique needs. Bring personalized health to your practice and choose from over 200 professional-grade ingredients to create vitamin formulas that improve patient adherence and result in tangible outcomes. All ingredients are sourced from the world's most trusted suppliers, and Vitamin Lab provides hands-on support to help you formulate and launch personalization to your patients. Say hello to a new era of personalized supplement solutions. Go to getvitaminlab.com/personalized to save $100 off your first formula.
It's a good reminder, when you're living your best life, you can really give more to others. Like, let's face it. I've been not living my best life and not giving my best, and then living my best life and being like, wow, I'm like kind of good at this. So
Yeah. Well, when you're not overwhelmed by your own problems, it's really much easier to get into somebody else's problems. Like when I see a client, I am 100% focused and thinking about what their experience is, trying to get into their shoes and really trying to understand what they want out of their nutrition therapy, right?
Oh, completely. You probably have your feet in the sandbar too at the same time. The park's full of sandbars. So it's a
Yeah.
kilometer of sandbar.
That's true. That's true. But it's just kind of that piece where, I'm not them and they are not me. And so you mentioned in one of your questions about like handouts. And yes, in the hospital, we give out handouts. That is what we do. We have a whole file folder of handouts. And I guess now you go to a file on your computer and you print off a handout. Well, I don't do that with my clients. I actually personalize every single document that I give them. I don't do handouts anymore because what we talk about, and AI helps a lot with this, what we talk about is what they need to know. And, it's very organic that way. So we're responding to them in their own moment and what they need right now.
That's very cool. That's very cool. It really does. Let's talk about your profession and how that might come to be because, people
Hmm.
in, I don't want to speak for everybody, of course, but in my kind of world here, I experience your profession in two different ways. One way
Hmm.
is through patients reporting the meal plan development they've done with a registered dietitian. And then the other way is the hospital setting because I work one block from VGH. And so there's lots of connection with registered dietitians there, of course, for that population that has recently attended that facility. But tell me what your process looks like when someone comes to see you. What is the step-by-step process that you take someone through, and what is the end result of that process?
Well, I do send a lot of questions to my clients ahead of time, and I tell them it's completely optional. I don't want people to feel overwhelmed. They can come as they are, or they can use the material that I send them to answer a few questions. So it gives them a chance to reflect and think about what they want from the session. Helps really kind of give me some guidance as where to start. So the questions might be like what they eat and drink, just like nutrition questions, right? And then I ask them what is most important to them. Like this is really what do they want to achieve through their nutrition. And this is where things start to diverge. So depending on what they're looking for and what has worked for them in the past, I can now, we start to work together building a plan for them that's very individualized for them. I might pull out some assessment tools based on what information we have. Like we may need to do a diet journal, like do a week worth of diet records. A lot of people already are doing that. So I might look at their journals that they have, make an assessment, figure out what their nutritional gaps are, and then we make a plan to fill those gaps. And I do have several assessment tools that I can use depending on the problem. And then I have several solutions depending on what the problem is. And so I kind of look at it like there's two directions we can go, right? We can either go with like traditional dietetics is you have your eat, do not eat list, right? I don't think anyone ever told me that's as simple as it gets, right? In school, but I started noticing that there's all these eat this, eat this in moderation, don't eat that.
Right.
Anyways, and so yeah, we have that as kind of like our legacy, but that's not necessarily how I would go when I'm developing kind of some general guidelines around, well, what can we do about your cholesterol? What can we do about your blood pressure? What can we do about this problem or that problem? Well, we could do this. We know this works. We know this works. So that's kind of like kind of a riff off of the eat this, don't eat that list. But it's personalized based on their preferences too, right? Like I'm not going to tell them to eat tofu if they can't stand it, right? That's gross.
They haven't cooked it the right way then. For
Yeah,
sure. No, I totally get that.
it depends on how willing they are. If they're open to trying new things, very personal, right? So it just depends. Are you willing to try tofu? I use motivational interviewing
Mm.
as a tool to help gauge people's readiness and their where they're at in their health journey. So it depends on what stage of change they're at, right? So I'm silently assessing that for the person, right? And I'm trying to figure out where they're at and what is the next step, because it isn't necessarily this person shows up and they get this. This person shows up in the place that they are in their life, and this is their next step. Not everybody's next step is going to be the same. And I think
Totally.
that's where we run into problems with Google and AI and these sorts of things, because AI and Google can't take in the information that a human can intuitively take from another human. Like that kind of understanding of where that person is at in their health journey. Like some people love to smoke. They
Mm.
just love it. It has a place in their life and they need it. And they don't want to quit.
Mhm.
And so this is not an area we're going to work on.
Right.
But some people are like, oh, I can't stand smoking anymore. And I know this is not related to nutrition. But it's like one of those things that you think, oh, everybody's going to want to quit smoking, right? Obviously, right? But it's not obvious. It's
No.
like, so are people willing to give up bacon because they want to reduce their cancer risk?
Mm.
Maybe not, maybe. But if they are, I have a plan for them,
Right.
Or if they aren't ready, then we can work on another area to give them that return on investment in terms of changing their nutrition. So maybe instead of, getting them to quit eating so much bacon and eggs in the morning, we might suggest, well, do you like oatmeal? You know, why don't we add some more oatmeal? We start bumping those things out of the diet a bit. And then we could move them towards, like, move the needle towards a
Yes.
healthier lifestyle. Because there's nothing black and white about nutrition.
Right. I totally understand the approach that you're taking. Yeah, for sure. I think that's such a smart approach. It's also separating you from some of the AI tools. I mean, I've been using an
Yeah.
AI tool currently for nutrition tracking and thinking that most people say, well, they're just like, yes men or yes women and encouraging in that sense. But, it actually, without proper prompting, it hasn't been like that for me, and it hasn't been intuitive in the way that you're describing for the programming that I'm looking for personally. So that's a nice differentiation in the way that you're describing it, just having that person, that anchor that you can communicate with about your nutritional needs. But you have also described some terminology that I don't think people in my profession use, and I'm sure some of the other professions in the healthcare space don't use. And you've said it a few times now, and that's gaps and gap filling. And what I'd love to learn from you, and maybe we could apply it, or maybe some of us in other professions could apply it to our approaches, this terminology around gaps. And can you tell me about, obviously, I understand how you're getting there with your assessments, and I love that.
Yeah.
Are we talking macronutrient gaps, micronutrient gaps, both?
Right.
What's your framework around gap development and filling?
And honestly, it's not something I picked up from school, like this idea of gaps. I just call it because people connect to that.
For sure.
But from a professional, like being a dietitian, we're looking at what a person needs, what their recommended daily allowance is. That's the real word, right? Nobody wants to hear that RDA, DRI. That's all
Yes.
confusing. I just like to look at it as like nutritional gaps. Nutritional gaps are caused in two ways, basically. So you're either not getting enough through your diet, or you have some kind of medical process or impairment that is preventing you from benefiting from the nutrition you're receiving. So, in a way, I think that separates dietitians from other providers who are providing nutrition advice, is that we're trained to really look at the gaps that are caused from the medical side of things. So we're looking at like, what is it? What are these conditions that you have that are preventing you from making the best use of the nutrition that you could get? And there could be psychological gaps too. Like it could be an eating disorder as well. Like, well, I don't want to get fat, so I'm not eating this, I'm not eating that. Well, now you're creating some gaps in your nutritional needs. You're not meeting your nutritional requirements for a psychological reason.
Hmm.
Or orthorexia is another example. Like sometimes people are so fixated about having a perfect diet that they are blinded and miss they're creating these gaps that need to be addressed. And that's what having that objective look into your diet helps, by having somebody like a dietitian come in and look at the diet and look at the medical history. We're also looking for evidence of nutritional deficiency through labs, that sort of thing, or symptoms. And then we will propose a way to fill the gaps nutritionally. Micronutrients, macronutrients, everything like that. We don't work in the area of nutraceuticals, though, so much. Maybe other dietitians might go that direction. Me, myself, I'm really focused on the basics. Let's get those basic nutritional requirements met, and you're going to feel so much better.
Definitely. Can we go through some examples of these conditions where the physiologic demands are high or needs are not met, even though consumption is in a state where they would be predicted to be met? What are some of the constraints or conditions where the demands are just not possible or not being met?
Yeah, I could think of a few things. I work with a lot of elderly out in Parksville, and about 60% of elderly are likely to be vitamin B12 deficient. So every person who is over the age of 65 should get a vitamin B12 lab test done, and to see if that they are actually absorbing the vitamin B12 from their diet. Because there's lots of vitamin B12 in a person's diet if it's not restricted, right? So if they are not able to absorb it, then they need to be prescribed it and be taking it as a supplement. But then, it gets a bit confusing. Like, well, I need B vitamins. So you go and get your B complex. But then all of a sudden, you've got all these other vitamins coming in. And are we getting too much of these vitamins? I find a lot of people who are elderly, they're trying to do the right thing, but they end up with all these special formulas. Maybe they've gone to a number of different clinicians and asked, what's the best supplement to take? And now they're taking them all. And now I've got somebody that's on way too much of one vitamin. And now they've got an excess of vitamins. So that's what I like about Vitamin Lab. To pitch it a little bit is that, getting just the right vitamins without getting too complicated with 100 different vitamin supplements in your cabinet is great, because, you could just take what you're given. It's all combined together. I like that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah. And Vitamin Lab is so great for that. And they have just access to all the active versions and the
Mhm.
extracts that have the best evidence. Like it's just the portal is amazing. So Vitamin Lab, yeah, we love you.
Yeah, yeah. I really think that all the dietitians should be using it. That's why I was a little surprised. I was like, how come I didn't find out about this sooner? I'm so excited to be able to offer it to my clients because like they will really benefit from being able to get rid of all of those bottles. And like people will bring in bags of bottles of the supplements that they are taking. And when you have that many different things that to take, compliance becomes very difficult, very
Yeah.
challenging.
Does it ever? Does it ever? One last plug about Vitamin Lab before we move on is that,
Mhm.
I was right in the same space as you when I first started working with them. Like, wow, this is going to be awesome. We can reduce the pill count or the variety of products to purchase. But then I
Yeah.
realized that the price is also better. Like, compared to like buying 5 or 6 bottles. If someone is basically taking more than 3 supplements, the price is like so good. So
Mm.
I'm really excited about that component as well. So thanks for saying that because I just love them and I'm right there with you. But so, these conditions, you gave a really good example there of the B12 example. I think it's a really important one that is very often missed because sometimes B12 deficiency just like kind of feels like aging, right? It feels like, oh, things are slowing
Right.
down. I can't do as much as
Yes.
before. And people don't get checked out. People
Yeah.
don't go and get assessed. And then they go and get assessed and find out, oh, shoot, like I've been deficient for a few years.
What I say to my elderly folks is I like, do you ever see like old people shuffling down do you ever see them shuffling? That's because they have a vitamin B12 deficiency and that's irreversible. That is irreversible. Once you are shuffling because of a vitamin B12 deficiency, it's too late. This is when you want to supplement.
Yeah, the nerves are difficult to recover.
Exactly. So, but we don't want to over supplement people. So that's where the testing, the assessment comes in. It's not something that you should just go and do because in order see, this is the other tricky thing about vitamin B12 is that if you have a deficiency, it's because you're not absorbing it well. And to be able to get enough vitamin B12, you need a mega dose, right? So you need a very large dose. But if you are absorbing it well, you don't want to be absorbing excessive vitamin B12. Yeah, so that's why it's better to get this information from a healthcare provider so that you know that you're getting the right amount. Like Dr. Google isn't going to be helping you in this regard, right? You need the support of a healthcare team.
What are some of the other things you see from Dr. Go? I mean, you're in this world and in the nutrition world where the things that people come in with can be quite interesting and often, not right for their physiology. But what are some of the things that you see people bring in that you think, okay, wow, I wish they had been here a little sooner so they didn't start doing this?
Yeah, so an example is early kidney disease. So, uh, everybody has their kind of weakest organ, and if it happens to be that their kidneys are not as youthful as other people's kidneys, then they're not doing that great, and the doctor will tell them, well, just to let you know that you're showing some signs of early kidney disease, and then of course that freaks people out because like dialysis, kidney transplants, it's all very scary, right?
Yeah.
Um, but when you go into Google and you start, um, Googling what do I do for kidney disease, it's very complex because it depends on what stage of kidney disease you're at. And so there'll be all these restrictions. Kidney disease is one of those things that is very, very unique to the person. So you need to be evaluating the labs and you need to be providing nutritional information specific to the current health of the kidney. And because the nutritional needs of each stage of kidney disease varies quite a bit, or depending on just unique characteristics of your presentation of your kidney disease, people are trying to follow advice that just doesn't apply to them. And
Mhm.
this puts them into a very perilous situation sometimes. Sometimes people will restrict foods that they need to stay healthy because they think that it's helping their kidney disease, but they're actually they get sicker and sicker. And this is the last thing that they need really is they need a healthy diet, and they need to protect their kidneys from further damage. So, yeah, so it's
That's a
really
good point.
important. It's a really important to be seeking medical attention instead of relying on AI or Google when you have a diagnosis that requires a nutritional intervention. Google can be a place to get started, but it's really important to not let that be your only source of information when it comes to a medical problem in nutrition.
Yeah, tons of controversy about nutrition and kidney disease. You're so right. Yeah, that is a really, really good example. So there's lots of differences, out there in the nutritional needs of people across different conditions. But in your practice, do you see any common threads with people in your community where you think, oh, I've seen this a million times in a row, no matter the condition. Like this is all about personalization, yes. But what are some of the common threads that you've seen?
Oversupplementation. There is a risk to the kidneys if you oversupplement. And I find that what can be common is if I get people to bring in every supplement that they're using, I will look at every single supplement and add up the amount of nutrient that they're getting, each nutrient. And it's very common to see people overdoing certain nutrients. And this is not good for their detox systems, of course, like their liver and their kidneys. And you don't want to overwhelm yourself with vitamin A and turn orange or anything like that. So what we want to do is what I do is I make sure that's really part of my assessment is just to make sure they're not over supplementing. Again, having one supplement is ideal rather than having a cabinet full because the risk of over supplementation is very common, I find. I don't know if do you ever find that?
Oh yeah, I just had a case yesterday. So in the last couple of years, I've had 3 cases of vitamin D excess, and
Yes.
my most recent one was yesterday, and I did not expect it. I wasn't
Yeah.
ready for it. Luckily, I ran the lab. Luckily I decided
Oh,
to
okay.
order that lab and caught it.
Hmm.
And I've been in the fortunate position to work with many healthy people over the last year, just the way that I've positioned myself to your point about creating the life and work that you want. I've been able to work with people who are going for optimal. And,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
right, as part of that,
Yeah.
have gotten an opportunity to run a few more vitamin D labs, even though the cost is a little high, and caught one
Yeah.
yesterday, which was thankfully because a few more years of that, and we would have had some significant challenges, I think, medically.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Optimal is a bit of a trap. It's challenging because people obviously we want things to be optimal. I mean, optimal is a great place to be, but we sometimes forget that as humans, we have been blessed with a metabolism that is very flexible. So optimal, there's a range for optimal that people don't recognize. Like, when we think of optimal, we think of like, the point at the top, but humans have been blessed with a lot of metabolic flexibility so that we can actually, there's a lot of range in what is optimal. And that actually brings me to my meal planning because you asked about meal planning and dietitians in the past, they would have like a couple like standard meal plans. And I know that fitness providers do this too as well. They'll have like a 1,200 calorie diet, a 1,500 calorie diet, and it's all boring foods because, these are diets are just terrible, right? But I have software that I use that actually I plug in the nutrition prescription. So the nutrients that we want to address, and it shows, 6 to 9 choices of meal ideas that meet that nutritional requirement. And so, like, optimal doesn't mean the same food every single day. I like to look at optimizing a week. So I always look at a week worth of food rather than a day's worth of food. And with today's software nowadays, it's perfectly possible to do that. And I think that's why dietitians, like you had mentioned about how these meal plans, like you go see a dietitian, you come out with a meal plan. Meal plans are extremely labor intensive to build. So that's where that came from. And so you'd have these standard meal plans. But nowadays we don't have to do standard meal plans anymore. We have the software, we have the technology. we can make a custom meal plan based on your preferences, based on your unique nutritional needs. We fill the gaps with food first and then supplementation after if we can't meet. Like vitamin D is actually a really good example. I can't usually, I, I, I've only found one person that was able to fill their vitamin D needs with food.
Yeah.
I was so shocked. Like when I went through the whole process of filling out her, because she just loved fish and like there's just the characteristics of her particular diet. She met her vitamin D needs, but oftentimes people don't. So that usually ends up in my recommendations as a vitamin D supplement, right? And so because we fill the gaps with food, and then anything that's left over we fill with a supplement, right?
Yeah.
So that's how we work.
I love that. I love that you've got the software that can do nutrient based too. That's really, really cool.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that must be very helpful. Because I've seen so many people now with magnesium deficiency that I've had difficulty, achieving through nutrition. Other minerals too, like micro minerals, and minerals are just really difficult to do without a software like that. So that's very cool.
Yeah, especially if somebody has a particular preference or intolerance that we need to address. Like celiac disease is not as bad as it used to be, but sometimes it was really hard to get a really good diet for a celiac because there just wasn't enough gluten-free choices out there with enough fiber. So it would be so challenging. But now with software, it's not, it's a piece of cake. And I'm going to tell you, that is one of the reasons why I quit as a private practice dietitian early on, was because I was like, this, I want to give personalized attention to my clients. And I couldn't because the software just wasn't there in the early 2000s, right? Just was too expensive, the software. And I was just like, well, I can't afford the software either. There's just no way I can do the work I want to do. So I actually ended up not doing it. I was like, that's it. I need to work for an organization that can afford the software. But the hospitals don't use that. They actually still just use diet sheets. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but diet sheets are a good place to get started. But, once you get past the diet sheet stage, you get bored. And you need to have individualized nutrition, right?
Completely.
So
tell me what your follow-ups are like. So someone gets a plan from you, and then I assume they do it for a certain number of weeks or months. What is the kind of typical follow-up that you go through, and what do those visits look like?
Well, I don't know how to say this in the kindest possible way, but I find that people, even myself, I see a dietitian. I have no problem with that. I'm human too. And, I don't, because I have medical issues as well. So, and I know the first thing I do to her is I lie about what I eat. And I'm not doing it on purpose. I know. I'm not doing it on purpose. I am telling her what I want to eat. And on my very best days, what I do eat. Yes. But until I know the person, and I know that they're not going to shame me or embarrass me or whatever, I'm not going to tell them what I actually eat. So that's why I think that multiple visits with a dietitian is important, because there is an element of trust building that has to happen over time. And so we start with the ideal diet. I ask them what they would like what they eat, and I'm going to assume that this is their ideal diet. So on their best days, this is what they eat. And I don't ask too many pointed questions beyond that, but we work with as a starting point, right? And then we start to move the needle. And as we build that relationship through follow-ups, then the more challenging eating difficult eating situations arise. Well, I tried eating like this for a week, and except for on the weekend, I had to go on a trip, and the only place I could eat was at this restaurant, and I ended up eating this, and I felt so sick. And okay, well, now we have a problem we can address, right? Which doesn't require a person to be 100% vulnerable in that first session. There's nothing that can be solved in one session, right? sometimes you don't think about the problems. And that's why you're there. Cause like a lot of our life is kind of, what do you call, in the like kind of in this unconscious area, right? We don't really know what's going on. And so you
Mhm.
have to bring that to light. And sometimes the process of working with a dietitian brings to light, oh, this is where my problem is. Oh, I wasn't eating enough fiber. Okay, so if I start eating like this, other things improve in my life without getting into too many details there. So it takes follow up to get to that point. You can't just do that in one session. So, does that
Mhm.
make sense? Did I kind of go around it a little weird? But do you know what I'm talking about, David?
It really does. Yeah, it's a trust building exercise. It's a total trust building exercise when it comes to nutrition, completely. So, in this sort of trust building exercise, I know that you've been working in telehealth, right? And working on video and having video conferencing like this for
Yes.
a number of years. Can you tell me what that
Yeah.
process has been like on the nutritional landscape? I can imagine that there's advantages, right? Like you can do a home tour, you can look in the fridge, you can see what they're doing.
Yeah.
What has the shift to telehealth been like for
Yeah.
you?
Well, it's interesting because I didn't actually see private clients until COVID. So, not except for those first couple of like early in my career. I was outpatient dietitian when COVID hit, and then I wasn't really considered essential. So they sent me home, and I was like, "Oh, what am I going to do now?" So I started doing telehealth, and I found that it was very interesting because when you have a person come into the clinic, you are stripping them away from their environment. People tend to act a certain way and they speak a certain way when they're out and about. And when you like come into the telehealth situation, you're actually coming right into their space, like as they are. And so it's interesting that you get a way different perspective, like you're more in touch with their reality in the telehealth situation. Of course, there's
Mm.
advantages and disadvantages, of course. Like when people come into person, because I do have a clinic in Parksville as well. When people come,
Mhm.
I can when they come in, I can watch them walking from the door
Mm.
to come into the clinic. And so, right from that interaction, I can start to see, okay, how are they using their body? How are they using the energy that they're eating? So that's something that gets missed in telehealth. So it's good to have like a combination of both of them, and I get different
Mhm.
things from each way of doing things.
Oh yeah,
Do you find the
completely.
same, David?
Completely. I do, yeah. We end up we do quite a bit of telehealth now, but most of the practice is still in person for me, just the nature of the work that I do. Yeah. Well, that's very cool though. I didn't think of your example about how a person moves and how they're expressing their energy. That's quite important. I imagine in the
Yeah.
population that lives in your neck of the woods as well, that's very important because mobility can be such an issue with the elderly too, that having that would be very valuable. So over the last 15 years, Rachel, nutrition science has taken steps forward, but also created more confusion in certain circumstances
Yes.
for the population that I see anyhow. And I'd love to get your view on this. What shifts have you seen in nutrition science that maybe the has changed your view or changed how you practice, or maybe you know um, debunked some of the things that you initially were doing in your career? Any major changes there that you would like to share that you think are part of the present kind of approach that's different?
Well, a lot of our nutrition knowledge came from very dubious research. Like, I think in a way that's part of the legacy of the dietitian is that, there was a lot of abuse that happened with research, nutrition research. And unfortunately, that happened, right? So people were abused to obtain that data, right? So that is the foundation of our nutrition. And then as the science comes in and we are evaluating new science, they use different methods that are more ethical, of course. But the confusion, I think where the confusion lies is that the research is usually very, very structured and controlled. The situations that they're doing this research is under very controlled scenarios, right? So when you've got data coming in saying that, yes, this is better than this, for example, but human lives are messy, right? We are not living in controlled environments. We are emotional. Here's an example. So my cat, I have two cats. One cat was preventing the other cat from eating. And I couldn't figure out, well, what's going on with this cat? My cat's losing weight. Is he sick? Is he getting old? Does he have cancer? Take him to the vet. Doesn't look like there's anything wrong with the cat. He's just losing weight. So okay, well, I'm going to start feeding this cat that's losing weight, some high protein, high energy food, make it easy for him to eat in case he has any dental problems, blah, blah, blah. Cat gains weight, like easy peasy. I was like,
So
you're like the
simple.
perfect patient. I change your diet.
Exactly.
You get what you need, keep the other cat away, solve the nutrition problem. We've got it. We've got it fixed. Easy peasy. But humans are not that simple. And a lot of times
Right.
our complex psychology really gets in the way of our eating patterns. So I think that's part of the problem. And that's the thing that I've learned through my career is that the psychology of eating is as important to the actual eating or what we're putting in our body.
Completely.
Because like the social and the psychological aspects of eating are so important and developmental too, because we have a lot of people who are having different experiences as they grow up as well. So every generation has their own milieu of issues around food. Whereas with my cat, I just put different food in front of him and he's like, fine, right?
Easy, easy, easy.
Easy. Yeah.
What are some of the systems? What are some of the systems and structures? Like, how do you make it more controlled or more structured for people without taking away the joy of food and the joy of living and the joy of being social around food? How do you set that up?
Yeah. So when a client comes in and they need to make a change, that's, like I said, the first thing I do is I assess their readiness for change. So sometimes it's the wife that wants to change. It's the doctor that wants to change. But the person sitting in front of me, they're kind of happy with their diet. They're not too concerned. So in that case, the change would be different than if I have somebody coming in and they're like, if I don't change, I'm going to die or something. I've actually literally heard that before. So if I don't change what I eat, I'm going to die and I have to change. So those are two very different approaches to working with the person. And that's where we start. And so I guess the key thing is just really working from a client-centered approach, right? Like you're working with the person that's in front of you today. Doesn't necessarily mean that person's going to be same in 6 weeks either. People's motivations change as well. So it's a very fluid, dynamic process of working with a person and their eating. So I don't know if I answered the question.
You did, yeah. Your first step in creating systems is just understanding where the person is, because in some situations it's, if I don't do this, I'm going to die. And in other situations it's, my wife sent me in and I don't really care about doing any of this with you and I would rather be home. That happens to me a lot too. I see those guys a lot. I love those guys. By the end of the visit, we're usually like this by the end of the visit, but at the start we're very separate.
Yeah, far apart. I also sometimes wonder if like they really need a marriage counselor, but they're here sitting in front of the dietitian.
And, you know, marriage counseling can come from a nutritional standpoint, right? There's so much because of the social aspect of it. So you get where the person is, you understand their life, and then now your process is really just this intuitive approach, right? And which I think is not just, it's actually quite profound and very difficult to do, especially via telehealth when you don't have the energy of the person. So to be able to do that, I think is super valuable. And you take them down these paths. You're meeting them where they are. And what kind of paths might they look like? Is it simple habit change, like let's just change breakfast? Or is it let's go buy new groceries and just have them around and don't let them expire? Like, how do you get at the healthy stuff for someone?
Oftentimes it's like I start at the beginning of the day. And so we start with what's the first thing you do when you wake up? And as we work through the day, there are areas that are more challenging to change, and there are areas that are less challenging to change. We're looking for somewhere in the middle. Like we're looking for an area that is challenging, that has that wiggle room, that we can move the needle. Some things won't change, right? Like the smoker that doesn't want to quit smoking, or maybe that glass of wine is permanent. It's going to be a lifetime thing. We're not giving up the glass of wine. So we build that into the meal plan. So we build it in, we add it in to supper.
Right.
And we make sure that we meet all the nutritional requirements, because unfortunately, if you're on a lower calorie diet or requirement, you're going to bump out some nutrients, right? So we're going to have to make sure that you have higher nutritional quality in the rest of your diet to make up so that you can have your glass of wine.
Yeah.
And it's okay. All foods fit. Dietitians really, truly believe that. Like, there's no bad food. There's no optimal food. There's nothing perfect. Like, sometimes it's like, there's no perfect day. There's no perfect day. You'll never get 100% of everything you need. I look at perfect weeks rather than perfect days.
So many good tidbits there, Rachel. Like, so we've got win the morning. We've got have the things that bring you comfort and joy, and this social component built into the plan. And then don't be deficient, right? Don't miss out on things. And just having those three alone, I guess the fourth one is win the week, right? So you win the morning and you complete the week in a way that the averages end up being at the spot, at the goal that you've set. I love that. That is a great structure.
And just recognizing that we have flexibility. Like the human body, we're more flexible than any other animal on the planet in terms of what we can eat. Like if you think about it, even our cats and dogs have far more specific nutritional requirements than we do. It's so odd. Yet we're so focused on having the perfect diet,
Oh, completely. Yeah. I'm just rereading Sapiens. I just had Sapiens sitting on my on my dresser, and I'm just like, funny you mentioned that, because I'm just like rereading. So I'm on chapter 3. So I've just covered the chapters that you're discussing, which is like that we're winning because we're the most resilient, and we have this such variety in our physiology that we can handle a lot of like random things, and that's pretty cool and separates us from many different creatures, although we're still a creature.
Yeah, that makes us the most successful. And so we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to eat perfectly. And eating perfectly sometimes creates these deficits on the other side. And so it's such a conundrum. Like we want to eat well, but yet we have these gaps. So again, another plug for personalized supplementation. Supplements can be dangerous, and we want to make sure that people are safely supplemented.
Definitely. And a plug for tracking too, Rachel. Like, a lot of what you're describing is that you're kind of helping a person week by week hit the goals that you've set. And that tracking can be just really powerful, even if it's not the healthiest of foods that end up on the tracking. Just watching it, I have learned from some larger studies, shows that people will make better choices if they're actually watching what they consume.
Yeah, and that's true. Yeah, most people do better when they're tracking. Some people, though, it's not indicated. And I can tell who it's not indicated for. That's like another thing about bringing a human into the conversation, is when is tracking the most appropriate, which is often it is. I'm not saying it isn't, but some people tracking is not appropriate for. I also have other tools. So I use this tool called the BioScreen, which was used in some very, very large health studies. And it's a food frequency questionnaire. So for the people that food tracking is not appropriate for, I can also use this BioScreen. And it's a food frequency questionnaire. They can do it privately on their own, so self-administered, or we could do it together. And then that way we can take a look at what the gaps are. And it shows all the micronutrient gaps and the macro balances and everything like that.
I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, it's really great. I've been using it since the beginning of my career, or working with clients privately, and it's a great tool. You can actually use it on my website for free if you want. You can just use it, and you get a summary. But I get a detailed report that I can interpret for each individual. And I think the individual interpretation is extremely important because some nutrients are more important than others, so you have to be able to identify the pattern. Also, some problems are easy to solve by one or two different changes, small changes. But when you look at the data altogether, there's a lot of nutrients to track, right?
Hmm.
So you're looking at all these micronutrients and nutrients to track, and you're like, oh my goodness, how do I solve this problem? That's why you get a dietitian involved, because we know how to solve these nutrition problems.
That's right. Well, that's really great points, Rachel. Thanks for that. So let's say someone, just as a closing couple of last questions here, I just want to pick your brain about either referrals or patients or clients watching this show interested in working with a dietitian. So many times when I talk to people in the nutrition world, our conversations always end up on the psychological side. They always end up on the systems thinking, right? And the psychological approach to eating, because there's just so much information. But what is the one thing you would want either referrers or people looking to work with a dietitian to know before they book with you?
I just want them to understand that they're not just going to get a, like,
Yeah.
exactly what you just said at the beginning, like the idea that all they're going to get is like a meal plan, or like a eat this, not that nutrition sheet. That's not the only thing we do. I want people to know that we put a lot of thought into solving the nutrition problem. It's not just like, I think that's what would happen is a doctor's like, well, they got diabetes, so obviously they need to eat less carbs. Go see a dietitian because I don't want to deal with you.
Yeah.
That's and I think that's the attitude.
Hmm.
But the solution to diabetes is a lot more complex than just don't eat as many carbs. Doctors just aren't aware that it's more complex than that. And even from a nutritional perspective, just from looking at the nutrients alone and how you build the meal planning throughout the day and this sort of thing. And the lifestyle as well, like activity is very important to be looking at when you're looking at these things. And the person involved. It's not just a diet sheet.
Yeah.
There's no diet sheet for diabetes that we give out. It's very personalized.
Yeah, the holistic plan, the holistic approach.
Yeah, and I don't even know if I like that word. I just think it's people who are referring people to dietitians, they just don't realize the complexity, like how deep we are looking into the person.
Hmm.
It's not just, we don't just have a file A, B, C, D, and they get D. That's
Yeah.
yours, right? It's not like that. We are like a mechanic. We are looking and listening for the sounds, and we're like, we think that sound's coming from over there, and we're going to try a few things, and then we're going to fix the problem.
Yeah. Love it. Very cool.
It's more complex. So we're not just handing out like standard meal plans. We're not just handing out eat this, don't eat that sheets. I don't know what you call those. That like diet sheets.
You've removed it from your, it's a memory wipe. You've scraped it from the memory.
I don't even do that anymore.
love it.
I
It's
never
so
send
great.
a diet sheet out. There is no diet sheet with my little logo on it. I don't even make them anymore.
There you go.
Everything's
There you go.
personalized. Everything's personalized. Like, and why not? AI is so useful for that.
Mhm.
So I can personalize everything that we talked about. It comes it's a conversation between me and the client. So it's personalized. It's an agreement. It's a negotiation. I don't know how you want to look at it, but it's something that we know is the client can do. And then we give them that information. We don't just give them a random diet sheet that may or may not be helpful for them,
Perfect. Well, I learned so much from you today, Rachel. Thanks so much for your time. It was awesome. Really great to know your approach. And, more broadly, I guess, about your profession, I think for me it's very valuable. So thanks so much. Where can people find out more about you? How can they find you online?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's at wiseeats.ca, or actually there's another one, wiseeatsnutrition.com. You can definitely just Google me. Rachel Dietitian in Parksville might get you there.
There you go. It's that easy. Excellent. Well, thanks again, Rachel. I really appreciate it. You contributed so significantly to Personalized, so thanks again.
Okay, great. Perfect. Thanks.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's discussion. What about today's podcast resonated with you? Be sure to tag at Dr. David Duizer and at Get Vitamin Lab. If you're learning from and enjoying this podcast, please let us know by subscribing to our YouTube channel and follow the show on Spotify and Apple. And don't forget to leave us a review. It's the best way to support our podcast, and it helps others find us. To learn more or book a demo to explore what personalization could do for your practice, please go to www.getvitaminlab.com/personalized.